All right, we got this G63 AMG G-Wagon in today to do an engine health check on it. So that's going to be checking the compression, checking for leak down if need be, and looking in all the cylinders and inspecting them with a little camera to make sure there's not like excessive scoring or anything weird going on in any of the cylinders, and checking for timing chain stretch. So we're about to do a lot of work on this engine, and we just want to make sure that there's a good bit of life left in it. It's 79,000 miles, 78,000, about 80,000 miles on it. So it's at a decently long life, but if all taken care of, it should be perfectly fine. And there's no issues. It's not misfiring. There's nothing like that. It's just we're about to put all this money into the car and replace the wiring harness and replace a bunch of seals and gaskets and leaking sealant and clean it all up and everything. Then it's good to make sure that it's at least worth it, and we're not going to be replacing the engine in a year from now or something like that. So it's got another 80,000 or 200,000 miles left in it, and that'd be good to know. So that's what we're going to be doing now. So I'm going to go ahead and take apart all the engine bay trim and all this kind of stuff and get the spark plugs out so I can get access to all the cylinders. All right, just got all the spark plugs out, so all the cylinders are open now. And this is what the spark plugs are looking like. This being how the engine's configured, so this is going to be like as if they came out of the car in order. So this is cylinder 1, cylinder 4, cylinder 5, cylinder 8. They all look pretty good. No signs of anything alarming. The only one that's different in any manner is cylinder 4 here. You can see it's probably the wettest one. And it's got a bit of carbon buildup on the insulator there in the middle. All the other ones are pretty dry, whitish tan color. So just make sure nothing's going on weird in there. But now I'm going to check the compression on all the cylinders and see what that comes out to be. All right, so that's the compression test complete. And here's the final results all laid out. Cylinder 1 through 8. You see the only one of concern is cylinder 2. And between cylinder 5 and cylinder 2, there's a 62 PSI difference total. So about 60, a little under 60 PSI off the average on cylinder 2. And cylinder 2, spark plug looks perfectly fine, which doesn't mean anything, just sometimes. Like I would expect if there to be any deviation, I'd expect it to be on cylinder 4, because it's the only one that is different from all the other spark plugs. But anyways, I'm going to leak down test cylinder number 2 and see if there's a leak coming from anywhere, and if so, where and how bad it is. So I'm going to hook that up now. Okay, got the leak tester all hooked up. The piston on cylinder 2 is at top dead center on compression stroke, so the cylinder should be completely sealed. So that's it. We're at 65% leak down. So a pretty good bit. You can definitely hear it from in here. It's impossible to feel because you have so many vents, like on the crankcase it can come from. It's obviously not super bad. If it had zero compression and you put it on there, I bet it would be blowing air out and it'd be a lot easier to find. But it's not that bad. You can definitely hear it. Here, I'm gonna put the mic up to the opening here and you can see what I'm talking about, hopefully. You can hear that. Hopefully, I was able to pick it up. But if that's the case, then that's gonna mean worn out piston rings. I guess I could say wearing out. It's still running and there's no issues. And there is no misfire, but it is 62 PSI lower than the second highest cylinder. Of course, if it needs rings, that's a full engine build. And I don't know if something like this could warrant that, especially without there being any issues at the moment. And especially since this engine's $109,000 from Mercedes. A rebuild would be substantially cheaper than that. With the exhaust out, I can put my hand over like this header pipe coming off of this right side here and make sure I don't feel any air coming out of there. If there is, of course, that'd be burnt exhaust valves. Or non-sealing exhaust valves, I'll say. Usually it's just from like a carbon buildup on the seat and the exhaust valve just can't seat properly, incorrectly, and make 100% perfect seal anymore. But if not, if there's nothing coming from there at all, then I would say it's from here, just judging by how much you can hear air flowing inside there. And you will have a little bit come out of the rings, but you should see, I don't know, 5 to 10%, not 60, 70. My pressure dropped down a bit, so the gauge had dropped down a bit, but it was up there a little bit more. But still, you should be down here somewhere on a perfectly sealed cylinder with a natural amount of pressure leak getting by the rings. Now that I got that cap off, I was gonna check the timing chain visually just to see what version it is. Okay, that is the updated chain version of this engine. So that's good to see. These are not as prone to stretching as the older version was, that was just made up of more links. Instead of like those thicker inner links, you can see that are like twice as thick as those most outer links, if what I'm saying is making sense. The older version was just made up of only those really thin outer links, just 2 of them stacked on top of each other to make up the same thickness as the inner one and the 2 outer inner ones. It's hard to describe. But anyways, that's what you want to see. That chain's a lot less susceptible to stretching. Okay, so I just remember when I was working on here, a G-Wagon, and the exhaust is like fully, it's a full dual exhaust. Like they never touch each other. There's no X-pipe or H-pipe or anything like that, like there is in literally every other 63 model. But it's true dual, and they come out, you know, from here, from the turbo, and go on the outside of the frame rail, and they never touch each other. So it's very easy to test like one bank from the other, because this exhaust only flows cylinder 1 through 4, and the other exhaust only flows cylinder 5 through 8. So it's pretty easy to isolate this, and it is definitely coming out the exhaust. So I have this one plugged with a couple tissues, and then this one I like to use tissues because it's like one of the lightest materials possible. If I can hold the camera still enough, you can see that blowing. And it's hard to get a perfect like covering over it, one because it's angled and it's so big across. Here, if I kind of hold it up close to it, Let me see if I can hold the camera somewhere 100% steady so that it'll be easier to see what I'm talking about. I wish I could. Actually, here, let me do that. I'm gonna tape off all of it, except for one little hole, so that the air flow coming through that hole will be a lot greater instead of coming out this giant opening. Oh, I have to seal that one too. Well, this is good enough. Okay, let me do that. Okay, this is what I've managed to devise up. Masking tape everywhere but this little hole. And you can really feel it coming out of there. It's very obvious. So, since these exhausts are like curved and bent down, I mean not bent, but like, you know, the cut is not straight up and down. You know, it's impossible to just lay something across it to be able to see it moving. So what I'm going to try to do is put the phone somewhere steady so you can see on the camera, and I have some talcum powder here, and I'm just going to sprinkle it in front of the hole, and hopefully you'll be able to see it blowing away and be able to see how much air is coming out now that it's such a small hole. So let's try that. Okay, so you can see there how much is coming out. And when I say how much, keeping in mind it's a small hole, but also keeping in mind there should be zero, literally 0.0% air coming out of the exhaust with this cylinder shut, which it is completely. So that's where the leak's coming from. It would probably just need, honestly, it would probably just need to be relapped. Like take the head apart, clean it, take the valves out, lap all the valves, and put it back together. It might need valve guides, maybe. If the valve's not like staying centered whenever it opens and shuts, if there's too much slop in the valve guide, then it could close not centered one way or the other, you know, like not perfectly on the seat, which it should self-center on the seat. That seems unlikely, but it could. But of course I'd be measuring all that stuff if I took the head apart to do all this. But at the most, I mean, at the least, it would need to take the head off, take the valves out, clean everything, and relap the valves, inspect it all, measure it all, and put it back together. And that should fix that. And then I guess what I'm hearing, like in there, from the oil cap, like in the crankcase, is just simply the air that naturally flows by the piston rings. And maybe that in combination with like the resonance that's created whenever the air is flowing, because the air is not supposed to be flowing. It's just supposed to go into the cylinder and stay there. Maybe like a minute bit will get past the rings, but you're not supposed to have actual air flow like there is now that's flowing all the way, you know, past the leaking exhaust valves out of the exhaust tubes. But anyways, at most it would need that, and then so it seems pretty good. I'm just gonna look inside the cylinders to make sure there's nothing like visually going bad or nothing about to happen or anything like that that's not showing up on these external tests. All right, we're inside cylinder 1 now. Looking at the intake side of the walls, which will always be the worst in this engine. You can see it looks great, no scratching or scoring anywhere. This is what the top of the piston and the top down view looks like. No scoring on the cylinder walls or anything like that. Yes, cylinder 1 looks good. All right, let's check cylinder 2. All right, this is what the inside of cylinder 2 is looking like. Also really good. You can see a bit of a wear pattern here on the side of the cylinder wall, that sort of grayish area, but it's definitely nowhere close to being worn through at all. Let's see what the side of the walls look like. This is going to be the intake side of the wall here. It looks good. No scratching or anything, that looks good. I don't see anything suspicious on it, no chipping or dents or dings or anything on it. Like I said, it's probably just leaking by the seat a little bit. Let's see, where's the other one? It's gonna be hard to get an angle on that. Yeah. I don't see anything physically damaged with it. And the piston looked good, like it hasn't been chewing up anything or nothing like that. Probably, it's always had clean air filters and stuff in it, so it doesn't look like debris ever ran through the engine and caused any damages. Okay, here we are inside cylinder 3. This also looks good. No scoring at all on the thrust part of the wall there. All right, this is cylinder 4. You can see it looks a bit shiny there on the right third of that piston. I can't tell exactly what that is. The walls look good like normal. Compression's good, so I wouldn't think the oil ring would be messed up. If anything, I would think one of the valve seals are just seeping a little bit of oil by and maybe letting some into that cylinder. Because that's the one too that had this spark plug. Wait. Yeah. And that goes about like with that too, like the inside of the cylinder. How it's not bad, but it's just different than all the other ones. So you can see like the cylinder head's wet too. That's what I would think would just be one of the exhaust, I mean not exhaust, one of the valves in general. One of the valve guide seals is just leaking a bit of oil, judging by how wet it is up here on the top of the cylinder as well. The walls look fine on that side and on this side. So no damages or anything. Just a bit of oil leaking past there. Of course, those seals would be replaced with a cylinder head rebuild, obviously, because you have to take them off, and then you would always replace them whenever you put them back on anyways. All right, on to the other bank now. We're looking inside cylinder 5. It looks perfect. No issues there at all. Here's the intake side. Yeah, that looks good. Yes. All right, here's the inside of cylinder 6. Also the same. All the cylinder walls so far are very consistent. All right, this is the intake side of the wall. That looks good. I don't see anything anywhere around that. Okay, this is cylinder 7. Oops. Yeah, it looks good, nothing concerning there at all. And the side of the walls look good as well. All right, here's the inside of cylinder 8. Nothing concerning here either. Piston looks good, all that looks good. Here's the intake valves. Check out the cylinder wall, face on. I don't see anything. Good and smooth and consistent. No issues there at all. So I don't see, everything looks physically great. So if I were to do anything, it would be remove the cylinder head and run through it, see if it would need to be rebuilt, meaning valve guides, valve seats, and remachined obviously. And then of course check the deck surface and everything like that. I'm sure it won't need anything, just a fresh head gasket and reassemble. The head gasket isn't leaking. At least, I mean, it's not leaking externally and it's not leaking through cylinder 2, at least I know, because when I was leak down testing it, I took off the coolant cap here and there was nothing bubbling up through there. So it's not a sealing issue or anything like that with that. I'm sure it would just simply need valve work done and the valve seals replaced too to fix that super tiny leak that's starting to form on cylinder 4. So I don't know if that would warrant the repair or not at this point. I guess I'll price out the repair and kind of leave that up to the customer. With 126 PSI compression, keeping in mind it's cold too. I would like to be clear. It's totally cold. The car's been off. It's been inside for a day or two now. So when hot, I'm sure it might be 140s, you know, a little more. It's going to seal a lot better when it's hot. And there will be fresh oil in the walls too. So right now it's just been sitting. I've just been turning it by hand. So there's no oil pressure, obviously. Nothing like, I'm sure all the oil that was on all the residual oils kind of washed down a little bit, and it's cold, so it's out of shape. But so all in all, it looks good and it looks healthy so far. It looks like the service intervals have been kept up with pretty good. And I always recommend to do engine oil and filter every at least 5,000 miles, and then the full service stick to the normal intervals at 10,000. So you'll still do your 10,000 1-year service, 20,000 2-year service, 30,000 3-year service. And then in between each of those, I would just change the engine oil and filter just to keep it fresh, because the cylinder walls are so sensitive to oil quality and viscosity and stuff like that. Being that there's no liners in this engine block, it's just like that the spray-on coating is supposed to protect it. Like that's what the rings actually ride on. And also this being an AMG, it comes standard with the oil cooler. So you have these oil cooling lines that go into the oil filter housing, and it'll flow down to an external oil cooler to help keep the oil cooler. So that helps out a lot with that too, with wear over time. But so all in all, it looks pretty good. Just those two things. Probably the compression's more concerning than the oil leak, because you will see stuff like this time to time. And a lot of times it's way worse than this. I mean, a lot of times you will have multiple plugs where the threads will be a little wet like that. So I wouldn't even say this is concerning, honestly. I mean, it's at 80-ish thousand miles now, probably at 160,000 miles. It'll obviously be worse at twice as much, but I don't even know if by then it would be it would be causing an issue or be leaking enough to be worth addressing, because they do get substantially worse than that. I don't know at what rate that the exhaust valve leak is going to progress. It's hard to tell from this point, but it's obviously leaking out, and at 70% leak down, that's a pretty good bit of leakage, but it's hard to say at what rate that's going to progress, you know. I mean, it might stay at 70% leakage for another, I don't know, 50, 100,000 miles, or if it gets worse next month, then that would obviously be bad. But it's one of those kind of things where at some point it's going to need to be addressed. Like, it's clearly less than all the other cylinders. It's clearly on its way out, which is really hard to judge how, you know, this is my first time ever seeing it. It's not like I've done a leak down test every service for the past 10 years, you know, once a year, to where I can monitor the rate of it, you know. Because if it was perfectly fine a month ago and it's like this now, then a month from now, it's probably not going to be great. But if it's been like that 5 years ago and it was at 65% leak down and it's at 70% leak down now, then okay, and in another 5 years, it's going to be 5% more. You know, that'd be 1% increase per year kind of thing. So I price out a cylinder head, remove, install, and potential rebuild. And yeah, send all that to the customer. And if everything's good, we'll go ahead. Well, I guess regardless, we're going to go ahead anyways, because that's what we were doing first before we start any work, is making sure it's good and making sure there's not like a hole in piston 6 or something like that, which I knew it wouldn't be anything catastrophic because the engine runs fine and there's no misfires or anything like that. But just if you're about to like wear through the cylinder wall, or you do have like a chip in a piston or something like that, then it would either be worth addressing now or not and getting a new engine or something like that. But everything's good to go now, so I can at least start repairs and see what we're going to do about the cylinder head and continue on. All right, now just the last thing before concluding it all. I'm just going to monitor for timing chain stretch and see what the camshaft values are. But first, now that it's cold on the initial startup here, I just want to see what this is going to sound like, to see if the these, how do I best describe this? The actuators that the camshaft bolts to, that connects it to the timing chain, the tensioners for those will wear out and cause oil pressure to leak out of the camshaft adjusters. Anyways, the first couple of seconds you start the car up, you'll hear a rattle. And it's fine, it shouldn't damage anything unless it gets substantially worse. But there is like a one-way check valve you can press into the cylinder heads where the oil supply gallery is for that tensioner. And that's the only fix for it. But since I'll have the timing covers off anyways, that might be worth doing if it has the issue. So let's see if it rattles. All right, I didn't hear any rattling there at all, so it was great, especially after being off for 20 hours. It was dead silent. I mean, it sounded like it's supposed to, not dead silent. Every engine makes noise. But anyways, now to move on to these actual values of the camshaft actuators. I always forget exactly where they put this. Okay, here's what I was trying to find, but this is just simply the stored values whenever this camshaft position was, I assume, originally taught in, whenever the engine was first assembled, unless someone's been in there before. But obviously you can see they're not moving. Even with engine speed, they don't budge at all. So I was trying to see active camshaft position, which you can see, but it doesn't really mean anything because it's here. And I guess it shows the range it's supposed to be in, but it just shows the live range. I was hoping it would show like how much it's currently adjusting it. I thought that was a value somewhere, like a live reading. And I may have mistaken that reading, the stored one, for a live reading. But you can see the specified value, and for it to be out of the specified value, you'd have to have something majorly off, like the timing would have to be off, the timing chain. If I had to skip a tooth or someone reassembled it incorrectly. You can see every value is just about in the middle of where it's supposed to be. But I don't know how much the ECU is having to correct that position. Okay, well, I think the only way to get an updated value of that is to go through the adaptation to like relearn the timing chain or relearn a new engine if you were to put one in. Since I haven't done either of those and I'm outside the coolant temperature range that you can do that in, I don't want to mess with that value. Here's teach-in after combustion engine replacement. And it simply asks you if one of the following repair measures was carried out, either a replacement of the internal combustion engine or timing chain or sprocket or camshaft sprocket have been replaced. Of course, no, they have not. It just exits you out. If you say they do, then it wants to start with the engine off for one and the coolant temperature a little cooler. So I don't want to relearn those adaptations since I didn't replace anything. I would like to try it on. I might try that on my personal Mercedes one time to make sure it doesn't mess with any other adaptations or anything like that or throw anything off. But as far as just looking at the current values while idling, everything is good. Nothing's outside the range or even close to being outside the range. All values are pretty centered within the specified value and what they're actually at. So that all looks good. I don't see any symptoms of anything being internally wrong at all. I looked too at this fault counter earlier and didn't see anything misfiring. This is where you can see extremely sensitive misfires. Like if any cylinder misfires at all, like if it's below, because the engines misfire all the time, but it will never throw a misfire fault code unless it's like, you know, a dead miss. Like it misfires 5 times within 1 second for 3 seconds in a row, or whatever the permissible value is. But you'll see if any cylinder even remotely misfires at all, it'll appear on this graph, and nothing's counting off at all. These tiny little blue slivers down there, that's the beginning of the bar graph, and this is a bar graph. So the bar would begin to raise depending on how many times it misfires, and nothing's misfiring at all. So, and the only fault codes in here are the ones I set, and that evap issue I have to look into, but nothing engine related. It's these, so all the fuel injectors being disconnected, the pressure sensor, that was me. Obviously, the only ones that are for real are a fine leak in the evap system was detected, and very fine leak in the evap system was detected, so no help. The pressure sensor upstream of turbocharger, that was me. Yeah, that was me. And all these fuel injectors were too. It should have more fault codes than that, but I don't know why it didn't register those. But anyways, it's the evap leak I have to check into, but that's totally unrelated.